Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we have a very clear mission. We're doing a rapid extraction of the critical intelligence from the Byer-Nichols threat brief for the first half of November 2025.
Right. It's a snapshot of the cyber battlefield as it is right now.
And our goal is to make sure you walk away with the most important strategic nuggets.
And that urgency really starts with two developments. The brief flags immediately. First, we have discovery, and this is the key part, the active exploitation of zero-click vulnerabilities on Samsung mobile devices.
Zero-click. That's always the maximum severity issue. If the user doesn't have to do anything, it's a nightmare.
It is the ultimate nightmare scenario. And the second thing is just about the economics of all this. Established ransomware groups, like Akira, are now believed to have earned over $244 million.
That number is just staggering.
And the whole economy is evolving. You have newcomers like Kazu who are just focusing on data theft. They don't even bother with encryption anymore.
$250 million from just one group. That really frames the stakes. Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start where the brief does, with the threats that require you to do absolutely nothing.
The zero-click threat is, frankly, terrifying. We're talking about a specific flaw, CVE 2025-21042, in Samsung devices. And it's not theoretical. It's being used right now by a new spyware called Landfall.
And the delivery mechanism is so important here. It isn't a phishing link or some sketchy text message.
Exactly. Landfall comes in through malicious DNG image files. DNG is a raw image format, a digital negative.
So your phone's gallery app just processes it in the background to create a thumbnail?
Precisely. You never even have to open the file. The moment your phone processes that image, the exploit fires. It is a seamless zero-click win for the attacker.
That is the very definition of insidious. And this is where the brief gets really interesting, because it's not just about the exploit. It's about how attackers are using AI large language models to get smarter.
It's a quantum leap in evasion. We're seeing AI baked right into the malware's core. Take PromptFlux, for example. This thing uses Google's Gemini chatbot.
To do what?
To continuously rewrite its own code signature.
Wait, hold on. You're saying the malware is asking an AI to give it a new disguise every few minutes?
Essentially, yes. It's advanced polymorphism. So if your detection tools are looking for a specific file hash or a string of code, PromptFlux just makes that obsolete instantly. It's a perpetually moving target.
And the LLMs are also making the attack itself more efficient, not just harder to catch.
Exactly. That's what we see with PromptSteal. This one uses language models from places like Hugging Face to generate short, tailored Windows commands on the fly.
So it automates the reconnaissance.
It does. It cuts down the time the attacker needs to spend manually scripting things. But the third one, SesameOp, might be the most chilling.
Because it uses a commercial API for its communication.
That's the critical insight. It's a backdoor, and its command and control channel isn't some shady IP address you can just block. It's the actual OpenAI Assistance API.
So the malicious traffic is hidden inside what looks like perfectly normal, legitimate, encrypted API calls to OpenAI.
You got it.
Wow. We're going to have to circle back to what that implies for defense later.
We absolutely must.
Yeah.
And before we move on, we have to mention the supply chain. The brief highlights a big attack on the OpenVSX marketplace.
For Visual Studio Code extensions, that's a massive surface. Millions of developers use those.
A huge surface. They found two strains, Glassworm and Sleepy Duck, spreading through extensions to steal credentials. It was so bad, OpenVSX had to rotate all of its access tokens. It just shows that the tools you trust every day are now part of the perimeter.
Okay, let's shift from the tech to the economy of the crime. That $244 million figure for Akira is just. Who's on top of the ransomware leaderboard right now?
Well, the ecosystem is always competitive, but Krylon is holding the top spot. They account for about 14.24% of victims in this period. Akira is right behind them at 11.34%.
And what about that newcomer you mentioned, Kazu?
They're the interesting one. Kazu is the disruptor, in third place with 10.17%. And they represent that trend. They skip encryption entirely.
Just data theft and extortion.
Right. It simplifies their whole operation, makes them faster, more scalable. And, INC Ransom and CL0P are still very active right below them.
So who are they hitting? You hear these numbers and you assume it's giant corporations, but the brief tells a very different story.
It really does. The data is so consistent here. Small businesses, organizations with 500 or fewer employees are the primary target.
By how much?
A staggering 70.03% of all victims. The story just doesn't change. They don't have the big security teams, the resources to fight these organized criminal groups.
And what about the sectors? Are we seeing any shifts in who's getting hit the hardest?
We are. Manufacturing is still number one at about 20%, but the fascinating change is the technology sector. It jumped from fifth place all the way up to second. Yeah, now at 11.34%. It shows attackers are realizing the value of IP and data from tech companies themselves. Financial services and construction got nudged down a bit.
And geographically, I assume the U.S. is still the main target?
By a huge margin, almost 48%. But the key thing to note is the global expansion. We saw new entries on the list this time: Mexico, the UK, Austria. It confirms this is a multinational, easily exported criminal business model.
That focus on tech and the global spread really underlines the organization here. Okay, let's pivot from profit-driven crime to state-level threats. The brief highlights a few trending adversaries, and the common thread seems to be nation-state alignment.
And when the motive shifts from profit to sabotage, the threat profile changes completely. The brief calls out Sandworm as the most concerning adversary in this space.
And that's because they specialize in destructive attacks,
Right.
wipers.
Exactly. They're targeting critical infrastructure, especially in Ukraine. Their goal isn't money. It's operational disruption,
Yeah.
pure damage.
And the evasion tactics these state-sponsored groups use are getting really esoteric. Tell us about the Russian-aligned group, Curly Comrades. They're using virtualization.
This is an extremely sophisticated technique. They use Microsoft's Hyper-V to run a whole Linux virtual machine inside the victim's Windows machine.
Well, why? Why go to all that trouble?
It's an elaborate hiding trick. It's designed specifically to beat endpoint detection and response tools, EDR.
Because the EDR is watching the main Windows operating system?
Right, but it's not looking deep inside the VM that's running within it. The attackers are basically partitioning their activity away from where the security tools are looking.
So the EDR just sees Hyper-V running, which is a legitimate process, but it misses the actual malware running inside that virtual bubble.
Precisely, hiding in plain sight. We're also, of course, tracking other major groups like APT37, TIC, and UAC00099, all using advanced espionage tools.
So if the attackers are that sophisticated, what are the basic flaws they're using to get in? What are the actual front doors they're walking through?
The common thread for all the actively exploited CVEs in the brief is pretty clear. They're flaws that allow for unauthenticated remote code execution RCE or privilege escalation.
Meaning they get full control without needing a password.
It's the keys to the kingdom, the highest payoff you can get.
And the list of vulnerable products is all over the place. It's hitting everything from the network edge to the core OS.
It is. It's a huge attack surface. We're seeing exploits against enterprise software like GladNet, TrioFox. There are two severe RCEs there, CVE 2025, 12480, and 11371. Fortinet's FortiWeb is also getting hit hard.
And then you have the perimeter devices.
Yep. WatchGuard Firebox, ASUS DSL routers, all being actively exploited. And of course, they're still going after the core. The Microsoft Windows kernel itself, with vulnerabilities like CVE 2025, 622.15, it's a full stat problem.
Okay, so let's try to bring all these threads together. We've got AI malware, nation-state sabotage, huge financial crime. What does this all mean when we pull the lens back and look at the bigger picture?
Well, the top news items in the brief really provide that context. You see these geopolitical tensions playing out directly. The U.S. Congressional Budget Office was hit by a suspected foreign cyber attack. SonicWall is now publicly blaming state-sponsored hackers for a breach back in September.
And there's direct government action, too.
Absolutely. The U.S. is putting sanctions on North Korean bankers who are tied directly to cybercrime and those IT worker fraud schemes. It shows that states are using this stuff as a tool of national power.
And the sheer amount of money we talked about at the top, that's constantly making headlines, giving context to a group like Akira's success.
It's a relentless cycle of crime. You know, the Bitcoin queen was just sentenced to 11 years for a $7.3 billion scam. Over $120 million was stolen from the Balancer DeFi protocol.
And law enforcement is trying to keep up.
They are. We saw arrests in Europe for a 600 million euro crypto fraud ring, and the U.S. just announced a new strike force aimed specifically at Chinese crypto scammers. The financial incentive is just astronomical, and it fuels everything we've been talking about.
This has been an incredibly dense period. So let's synthesize this. What is the single main point you think our listeners should take away from all this?
The key takeaway is really about acceleration and convergence. The threat landscape is moving so fast toward these highly evasive, low-noise techniques.
The zero clicks, the AI malware, the stealth VMs.
Exactly. And that acceleration is being driven by nation-state motives for sabotage and espionage, But, and this is the convergence part, the bulk of the economic damage, that 70%, is still landing squarely on small businesses.
Which brings us right back to that point about the Sesame app backdoor. If malware is now using legitimate commercial APIs from Google and OpenAI to hide its command and control traffic, we have to completely rethink our defenses.
I do.
So here's the question for you to mull over as you integrate this intelligence. How long until our detection strategies have to shift from just blocking known bad traffic to critically analyzing the intent behind what looks like perfectly benign API calls?
That is the new defensive frontier.
Until the next deep dive, stay safe.
Reach out to us at jbyer.com for comments and questions. Follow us at Byer Company on social media, and if you'd be so kind, please rate and review us in your podcast app.